Peggy, so wonderful to have you here at RISE conference.
Thank you. Thanks for
so
having
much
me.
for joining us. So we're here to talk about Microsoft and its initiatives. So I wanted to start off this conversation just talking a little bit about your role at Microsoft, because not many people may be familiar with your role. You were at Qualcomm for many years.
25.
25, that's a long time. So tell us a little bit about your role at Microsoft and what you do.
So basically, I look after our strategic partnerships. I look after our investments, our early stage investments, and generally just business development across the company. So all aspects of the company, from Xbox on one end to cloud and enterprise to applications and services, and even coming out of our research areas. There's a lot of interesting technologies coming out of there, so I'll look to figure out how to commercialize those and take those to market.
It's a wide-ranging role.
It is, it is. You know, one day you're thinking about Xbox and the next day you're thinking about enterprise. So, but it's super exciting. It's a great time to be at Microsoft, and I've loved every minute of it since I got there, though things have gone very, very fast.
You've been at Microsoft for nearly 2 years. What is the biggest misconception about the company that you now found?
You know, I don't know if it's a misconception, but I would say one of the biggest moments I had when I first came in the company was just the depth and breadth of all of those businesses. So I had come from Qualcomm, and Qualcomm has a chip business. I think most of you are probably familiar with smartphone chips, and that had very deep depth, obviously, but that was multiplied many times over at Microsoft. So one of the things that the company was going through a transition as I started was this idea of one Microsoft and trying to pull all of those things together so that we could better look across our assets as we looked at new areas. So for instance, IoT, we had in each of our groups, we had an IoT initiative. So we had Windows IoT and we had Azure IoT, and we were really trying to say, if we could look across the company, can we bring an all-up Microsoft IoT strategy to market? And it was really the first time the company was doing that sort of thing. And that transition was in play when I got there. We were at the start of it, and I would say in the last 2 years, we've really embraced it, and we've been able to really leverage the assets, so we're not just looking at it from one lens, but we have the ability to look across the company.
What would you say is the biggest difference between working at Qualcomm versus Microsoft?
Oh, let's see. Well, at Qualcomm, my whole world was mobile. It was definitely mobile, and it was the center of our world. So when we looked at connectivity in the cloud beyond it, we kind of didn't really involve ourselves in the cloud beyond it. You know, it was all about connecting the mobile devices, and you know, someone else was handling the cloud for the most part. But I have an interesting story. When I first met Satya, and I was learning about the role that he had envisioned for this head of business development, he said, my worldview is a mobile-first, cloud-first world. And it was a little bit of an aha moment for me, because he had spoke about this idea of ambient intelligence and having your data follow you around from device to device, from your work life to your home life. And all of a sudden it clicked for me. It's like, you know, you really can't have one without the other.
Right.
And it sort of was the other half of the equation. And I'll tell you, I was never going to leave Qualcomm. It's a great company. It still is a great company.
So why did you leave?
I know. What happened? And it was that moment where I thought, this is it. This is why this company is now at such an inflection point. Microsoft is transforming into more of a worldview, and Qualcomm has a piece of that for sure, but Microsoft would be embracing all of it. And to me, that was the challenge and also the opportunity. I thought, this is what I want to do, and I remember walking out from my dinner with Satya and calling my husband and said, "We're moving." That was it. We were gone, and it's just been a great journey.
As Microsoft's chief deals maker, you look at partnerships as well as investments across the globe.
Right.
What is the calculus that goes behind your decision to invest or to acquire?
Well, I would say we have three levers with business development. We can partner, we can invest, or we can acquire. And they're sort of in three different places on the spectrum. Many times we start with a partnership because there's one area that we want to solve for our customer, and a partner happens to have the answer. And if we can solve for our joint customer through a partnership, then we'll step into it in that area. And an example of that is our partnership with Salesforce. So even though there's an area that we compete with Salesforce, our joint customers saw an opportunity, or we saw an opportunity for our joint customers to put our product together with theirs and offer more value for our customers.
Right.
So that worked out fine. Other areas we'll invest alongside of a commercial deal many times. And if that helps the deal along, or if that somehow accelerates it, we'll do that. And then clearly we'll jump all the way to acquisition. And usually that is, they've got an answer to something. We are not going to be able to build it in time, so let's just acquire. If that's the thing that will get us to the answer in the quickest period of time, and there's a great need for it, we'll jump all the way to that end point.
What do you look for when you're looking at acquisition or investment targets?
Well, it's interesting. We look for a number of things, but again, I would go back to if they're solving a problem for our customers. We tend to focus less on competing over existing value and looking at creating new shared value. So if they're able to solve a problem for one of our customers, then we're going to listen, learn, and see if we can put the pieces together with them. I would also say with partners, many of them startups that we're tapping into now, it's really about focus. I think many times people say, "Wow, that's Microsoft on the other side. If I could just integrate with Microsoft, there's so many different areas I could help them with." And I would say, from my perspective, I want to see focus first. So bring me a single point solution. Let's get that working well, and then let's expand from there. And I think a good example of that is our partnership with Uber. So it's kind of a surprising partnership with Uber.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the partnership.
Yeah, so Uber, fabulous company, and I'm sure you all love Uber. But we felt like there was a point where, if you think about how you call an Uber, and let's say you're involved in something in your Office 365, so you're doing some emails or something, then you think, "Oh, I've got to remember to call an Uber." So you're putting sort of the burden on yourself to then get out of this, open up the Uber app, call the Uber. What we did with them is we said, let's pool our data. So from the Microsoft side, we know your calendar. You've got an appointment in here. We can see that it's cross town. And on the Uber side, if we can just have a connector right into that, we did it through an add-in in Office 365, we could create value for the customer. So now you can be in the midst of being productive, which is what Microsoft's all about. We're the productivity and platform services company. And you can get a notification that says, "By the way, you need to get going, and now would be a good time to call your Uber," without having to put the onus on yourself to step out of the app and open the Uber app. And it's been great, and it's that friction point, removing friction points is really what we look for when we're looking for partnerships, acquisitions, and investments, if it helps our joint customers. And it's just a nice, smooth interface. It's one of those things you don't have to think about. It just happens. So that's the sort of thing that resonates with us, and that we'll clearly look for more of.
So that's an example of a partnership, but have there been any acquisitions that you've done recently that have really helped to transform Microsoft's operations or business when it comes to mobile?
Yeah, so there's a couple. There's one that I'm super excited about. It was a company in San Francisco called MileIQ. They do a very simple thing. Again, simplicity is key. Too complicated, and you don't want to have to read about how to use it. Super simple, and it was focused at a market that we're very interested in, small, medium business. So we want to increase our capability in small, medium, and business market, and this app fit perfectly. It does one thing. If you're a small, medium business, you're likely driving for your business, whether you might be a florist or some sort of a delivery service. And as you're driving, those are business miles, and you can deduct those at the end of the year as a business expense. So the app, it's always on in the background. It detects that you're in the car. It detects that you're moving. And then when you step out of the car, it says, swipe right or left, personal or business. It's as simple as that. Boom, it tallies it up. At the end of the year, it pulls it all together in a format that you can then submit on your tax form. So what our MileIQ's customers found is they were saving this tremendous amount, because the problem, as you know, if any of you are running small, medium businesses, is, first of all, you got a million other things to do. It's hard to think about, I've got to tally this one up. And it comes time to do your taxes, and it's usually just a guesstimate, and oftentimes a low guesstimate, because you think, I don't want to over-guesstimate. I don't want the tax officials after me. But this is a solid tally, a solid ledger of everything that you did throughout the year, and like that, you get your tax deduction. So they now are taking that to expense reporting, time reporting, so you can see how we can now start to offer small, medium businesses a frictionless kind of an experience. So that's one that we're super excited about, and look for more in that area. I think another one was our acquisition of Xamarin. And Xamarin is a great tool for those of you devs in the audience who are familiar with it. It helps you translate your apps from iOS to Android to Windows phones. So being Windows people, we were most interested in it because it helps solve a problem for our Windows developers. We could help them bring their apps onto our platform. And we had a partnership with Xamarin that was fantastic, but at one point we said, this is solving a problem for our devs. If you're a small dev and you've got to develop to iOS and then to Android or whatever order you're developing in, that's a lot of work, a lot of resources. And we said, let's solve a problem for our devs, whatever they're developing for. So we brought it in to the company, and then we announced at our Build conference just a couple months back that it would be free for Windows developers. So we incorporated it into our line, and it was great. The audience loved it, and again, pleased them, delighted them, and hopefully, increases their engagement with us. So it was more about delighting our devs and solving their problem. It kind of turned on us. That was really what the bigger value was at the end of the day for us.
And tell us a bit more about how Microsoft's acquisition strategy has evolved over the years and under your kind of years at Microsoft.
So I'm a big fan of needle-moving things, and I don't necessarily think needle-moving means a really big acquisition. So it can be these small things like MileIQ and Xamarin, or Acompli, which was a fantastic Outlook app on iOS. And that brought us, in an instant, a whole number of new fans of ours once we bought Acompli and brought it in. And then, so much so, we ended up taking the lead of the CEO of Acompli, and he now looks after all of Outlook. So he's bringing sort of the super magic he had as leading Acompli iOS app, and that's now had a great halo effect, and he's looking after all of our Outlook properties. And it's been a wonderful engagement with him and the team that he's brought in. And I would say the other thing that we're doing more of is we used to be super quick to integrate, and in some cases that's required. But for the most part, we're trying to, as we bring in early stage startups or whatnot, we're trying to leave them somewhat alone, because they have something that made them special, that made their app or their product or their service special. And rather than bringing them in and then assimilating them, we said, let's leave them alone and let's see what we can learn. So I would say a big difference over the last few years is you'll see us, we're more of a learning and a listening culture, and we're doing that from these acquisitions that we're trying to let them continue to blossom and do what they do so well. And actually, the learners are us, and that's been very, very powerful for us.
The Nokia smartphone acquisition predates you, but it's also one of the massive deals that Microsoft has undertaken. And recently, there have been more announcements about layoffs and write-offs. What do you think went wrong with that acquisition?
Well, I don't know that I would term as anything went wrong with it. I would say that we're sharpening our focus. We are definitely focused on users who are Windows fans and business and enterprise users, ones that's sort of more of our core expertise. And so you'll see us over the next months, we're sharpening our focus much more to that those two areas. And that then combines well with all of our apps and services focused on the enterprise. We can highlight them and do deeper integrations. So we're excited to carry that forward, but with a sharper focus.
And Windows Phone represents a tiny slice of the global smartphone market. Would acquisitions play a further role for you guys to strengthen in the mobile space going forward?
It's interesting. We are really looking at the mobility of the user versus what mobile devices in their hands. Because frankly, as you said, with that market share, we know our users who are using our other Microsoft products have other devices in their hands. And I think, if you recall, a few months after Satya became our CEO, we launched Office on iOS. That was a big move, right? A big cross-platform type of move. And essentially, we want to go where our users are. So if our users have a desktop or a laptop where they're engaged in a Windows product and they're carrying another device in their hands from a different operating system, we want to make that work for them as well. And so you'll see us having more of a focus on that going forward. So we think of it as the mobility of the user and allowing the user to have the best mobile experience. So as they go from big screen to desktop screen to tablet to handset to a small device on their wrist, how can we play a role in making their data follow them around in a more cohesive manner? And you'll see us focusing more and more on that and pleasing the users of our products wherever they may be. And in that sense, if we can draw them in and introduce them to other products and delight them in other ways, that's obviously all accrues value for us.
For startups and entrepreneurs looking to take their products outside of perhaps China or Hong Kong and go to the US, what advice do you have for them, Peggy?
Well, I think certainly we'd love to talk to them. We have a few things, specific to Microsoft, if that was your question. We have obviously a global footprint, a strong global brand. What we're looking for in startups is, when I talked about solving a problem, but in a locale, because we are self-aware enough to know that we aren't going to solve everything from within the four walls of our headquarters in Redmond, Washington. It's really about listening and learning in geos around the world, understanding what problems are being solved. Maybe people have a different way to look at productivity from a work aspect. We know many of the markets outside of North America are mobile-only markets. I mean, mobile first is something that we've embraced. Many markets are mobile only. And so is there something interesting? Is there an interesting application or service that solves for a productivity issue in one of those markets, those are the sorts of things we're interested in. I would also say we're focused on what we're looking for in that we want it to align up with one of our 3 core ambitions. And the first is reinventing productivity. If it helps us reinvent productivity in some way, shape, or form, we're interested. And that's where I think these local apps in different locales will likely resonate with us. So we'd love to see those. The second is building the intelligent cloud. This is a big topic. Clearly, we have Azure, our infrastructure and platform as a service. But on top of that, we're working with many, many ISVs who are bringing in a plethora of data. We have data, and we can mix it in with other data and build an intelligence base there. On top of that, we have excellent machine learning capabilities, predictive analytics capabilities, new cognitive services that we've been introducing recently. So it's not just about cloud anymore, it's about what can you do with all the data that resides in the cloud, and what can you do with it in a timely manner? What kind of pattern matching can you share with your customer that they might not have seen on their own? Sometimes it's a manual process. They're looking at data over here and data over there, and you have people in the middle trying to correlate. If we can correlate for them, then we're going to bring more shared value. So that's building the intelligent cloud is a strong area of focus for us at Microsoft. The last one is more personal computing. And what we mean by that is really looking at new categories of devices. So things like Surface Pro 4 line, our Surface Book, this idea of a 2-in-1, a tablet and a laptop together. So you have the full power of a laptop in a nice device that is very small and lightweight, yet you can break it apart and have a tablet. So you can have a great entertainment device to watch a video or a movie. And this idea of mixing your digital work life and digital home life together is something that we want to bring more attention to. So more personal computing, things, new product areas like HoloLens. So that's a whole exciting new area for us at Microsoft, but it's a new category that really just a few years ago didn't exist. This idea of mixed reality, really, we call it. It's really a mix of AR and VR, but we'll believe there'll be a whole new medium around that. Mm-hmm. Not only in entertainment and gaming, because those are clearly the obvious ones, but in enterprise. I mean, and education. You can think of things from an enterprise space where someone's looking at an aircraft engine, they have their HoloLens on, the aircraft mechanic is 3,000 miles away, and they're annotating the screen and showing, where to put in the instruments. It's going to be completely transformational for industries, and we're excited about that last category. We have dev kits out now, so we launched those, brought those to market in March of this year. And right now it's about listening and learning to the new developers of augmented reality and seeing what they do with it. We were really excited to sort of unleash the devices onto the developer community because they're bringing back an amazing set of both entertainment and enterprise type applications.
I want to talk finally about women and tech. You're one of the, rare senior executives within the tech ranks at global technology firms. What can tech companies do globally to give more opportunities for women in technology?
So, clearly there's, for me in my engineering mind, it's a kind of a simple equation. We desperately need engineers, and women are underserved or underrepresented, I guess, in the engineering community. And so it's kind of an equation. Let's just introduce more women into the tech world. But I also think we can take a different view of it. And it's something that I've been focused on recently. It's this idea of ensuring our design teams have women on them as well, to make sure that we're building products for everybody. Because guess what? When you build products for everybody, you're actually increasing your total addressable market. It's good for your bottom line. And the way that we're going to tap into that broader addressable market is to ensure that we have women on our design teams. And so we have an initiative at Microsoft called Hack for Her, where we think about these products and how we can make them better for women. Things like our Surface Book, which to me, I like to call our Percival PC, because you can fit it into your purse. It has a power of the desktop on my desk, and I can fit it into my purse. So it's those sorts of things, but we need women on the design teams in order to get that perspective. And without them, you're just missing a big piece of your market. So it's super important that we first get more women into these careers and then put them on our design team so we can build products for everybody.
Peggy, it's been so great speaking to you. Thank you so much for your insightful discussion.
Thank you so much for having me, Yoonhee.
Thank you.
Thank you.